Economy's tight right now, but that's not why I'm under this bridge. I scooped up some trolls by Reaper Miniatures, and today we got a double feature. I got this rock troll for, well, giant troll purposes. But there was something about this little cave troll sculpt that I loved. He felt old school, and I thought I'd paint him up in a retro wargaming scheme just for kicks. A retro? I don't know. Two very distinct sculpts, two wildly different color schemes. Let's paint them up. Now the PVC in plastic Reaper miniatures sometimes has a funky reaction to spray primer, so our rock troll will need to be hand primed, no problem. But I'm learning that this troll is just too big for the finger rest on my painting grip, so I'll have to take that off while I work on him. Now, as for our retro troll, the square base is mandatory. It's old school, and these days an absolute statement. We'll affix sand to the top of the base with wood glue to match the texture by his feet. Once everything is dry, we'll knock out the base coats. Starting with the rock troll, I'm thinking a black and green scheme for this guy. So we'll slather the crystal areas with flat green. There's no issue being sloppy at this stage. Then I'll paint flat brown on the belt, with the furry loincloth and what I assume is a water skin. Maybe it's a big bone. I don't know, I'm painting that thing brown. Now for his skin, we're bringing back old friend of the channel, Vallejo Black Brown. But going around this guy with the brush really makes me miss the finger rest, especially the farther my painting hand is from the grip on the model. So I'll just pop it back on and figure it out. It's a new tool for me, so I'm still learning. Now back over to our retro fella. When I placed this order with Reaper, they also sent me this bottle of rich indigo paint. Luckily, this is exactly the kind of color I needed for the color palette I have in mind, so I'll coat the whole model. Wait, hold up. I'm noticing that the paint's kind of acting weird as I apply it. The miniature is supposed to be pre-primed, so could it be something wrong with the primer or lack thereof? It's kind of breaking up after the application. I've used enough acrylic paint to know that's not normal. Oh well, I'll just be patient. But this is probably gonna take a while. As I continue, I'm thinning the paint down less, and that seems to do the trick. Egg on my face, but we're back to business. Weird start for a new paint, but I love this color. It doesn't even need to dry before the next step. The old heads will know the move here. I'll throw some Vallejo military green all over the base. We're going for that Goblin Green base aesthetic. Like Disco, the Goblin Green base will never die. Let's pick out some details next. On the rock troll, I mixed the black brown with flat green for the base. I want the model to look as if it were made of its environment, but still separate. A quick pip of buff over the teeth. And I'll mix what's left of the buff on my palette with the flat brown and use it to paint the loincloth's fur and the water skin bone thing. I'm also thinking that the eyes and nails should be flat green as well. On the retro cave troll, I'll mix in a little bit of pink with the indigo and paint all of these warts, tumors, and his nips. I'll work these up to a bright pink eventually. His belly and the interior of his ears get neutral gray. Lastly is his hair. I'll use the black brown on my palette to paint the hair on his head. We've also got to paint his armpit hair, and most dignified of all, his little happy trail. Then as with the rock troll, a little buff on his teeth and his claws. Lastly, flat brown on the loincloth. Man, I haven't been here very long, but I'm starting to stink. Maybe, I should take a wash. And so should my trolls. And that's pretty straightforward. Everything that's brown gets Agrex Earthshade, and everything that isn't gets Vallejo Blackwash. The next few steps are my favorite, because they have the best trade-off between ease and result. I'm dry brushing the rock troll with a 5-part mix black brown and 1 part gray. I'm just trying to define the musculature here. The wash is still a bit shiny and tacky in the deepest areas, but I'm not sweating it. I can fix it later. Even if it doesn't dry matte soon, I can knock out the sheen with a varnish once I'm done. Flat green back over the crystals, easy, simple. I dry brush here, but I apply it regularly over the claws and eyes. But before the green on my palette dries, I'll mix it in with a little bit of gray and dry brush the base to try and further a mossy stone effect. Now I'm just going to push the crystals a little bit further and dry brush them with Scorpy Green, which is this beautiful radioactive green and should really help push the contrast on this model. Now the cave troll skin's actually looking pretty decent at this stage, and I'll come back to it. So I'm gonna skip the dry brush on the skin with him and go right into touching up the blemishes with straight up pink. Some of the larger ones do have veins on them, so I want to hit those with a dry brush. Now you're a smart viewer, so you could probably figure out what happens next. I'll touch up the teeth, claws, belly, and loincloth with the same color that they were originally painted across both models. But now let's talk about painting skin and musculature. At its core, I mean, it's the same basic principle as much of miniature painting, but we're not edge highlighting here. Not really. I'm going to try and paint volumetrically, and the more steps in color transition, generally, the smoother it looks. With this in mind, I go through another round of the indigo blue. Next, I'll experiment with a little sky blue to see if I like that, but ultimately I decide against it and try out pastel blue mixed in with the original indigo. Ooh, that mix is money, and so we'll carry on with it. Let's bring the belly up to the same level by painting streaks of sky gray, and then wrap up the skin on our retro troll with the pastel blue straight up. We've got two targets here. The parts of the body that would catch the light from above, pushing that volumetric angle, but this model has heroic scale proportions. The head and hands are larger than they would be on a realistic humanoid, and it pays to draw attention there when viewed from a distance as most minis are. Knuckles, brows, lips, paint them up. My philosophy on the stone troll skin is fairly similar, I just get there a bit differently. I start with a straight neutral gray highlight, but the contrast is just a little too strong for me out of the gate. I go around and apply it anyway, because I want to work my way up there eventually, but it's too bright for a midtone. The fix is pretty simple. I just mix up the midtone. Black, brown, and gray. Big surprise. And then I hit the raised areas of the muscle. Doing this step next also allows me to refine the highlights so that they're nice and thin and crisp. Now that the skin is where I want it, it's easy to bring the rest of the model up to a finish. First, I highlight the loincloth with flat earth, this goes for both models. Mix in what's left with buff to dry brush over the fur and water skin on the stone troll. And then I'll dry brush a little bit of deep yellow over the crystals. They need a little more saturation. Lastly, let's bring some of that sky gray we had earlier and just pop it here and there around the face to reinforce that as the focal point on the model. We're almost done. Thank God. I'm really starting to think there's like a sewage outlet or something nearby. There's one more thing we need to do with our retro troll. The icing on the cake. Okay, two more things. First, I want to pop some pink in his eyes. Just very carefully. Got it. But the one thing that really makes this model retro is a bright green base. And all we need to get there is a dry brush of that flat green, followed with a dry brush of the Scorpy green. With that, these trolls are officially finished. Even though they went through a very similar painting process, it feels like they both handled completely differently. The cave troll being a substantially smaller sculpt with more exaggerated proportions and deep recesses felt like painting an old metal mini, which by the way I do think these models come in. Stone troll on the other hand felt more new school. He's larger and a bit smoother except around the crystal growths. On a larger model that's not so bad because you have a little more forgiveness on painting the skin, though you'll just have to make sure that your transitions in tone are a little smoother. I absolutely love painting skin, and having that larger canvas makes it a bit more fun and a bit easier. The limited palette really worked in my favor here, making the whole process incredibly efficient despite his size. Now I want to hear from you. If you've had any memorable troll encounters on the tabletop, drop them in the comments below. What game were you playing, and what kind of troll did you run into? If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It's completely free to do, and it really helps a growing channel out. Thank you for watching. This is Bristle Cult. Happy painting.